Welcome to another episode of Humans for Humanity. There are voices that speak and voices that vibrate. Voices that don't just carry words, they carry codes. Frequencies that bypass logic and awaken something you forgot you knew. This is Humans for Humanity, not just a podcast of remembering, a spiritual intelligence project in the form of a conversation, where emotional truth, somatic memory, and intuitive knowing intersect with archetype, energy, and soul design. Each episode is unscripted, tarot-guided, and spirit-led, because real truth isn't manufactured. It emerges. It rises in the body when the space is safe and the witness is present. Here, stories aren't content, they're ceremony. We listen like every word could be a map to someone's liberation, because it is. This is where personal grief echoes into collective pattern, where the story of one becomes the reckoning of many. So no, today we're not just telling a story, we're summoning a force, a resonance that shakes loose what the mind can't hold, but the soul has always recognized. Today I have the deep honor of welcoming Jen Donlin into the field, the woman they tried to dim, diagnose, and domesticate, only to realize that she was the voltage they feared and the medicine they needed. This is the reckoning of the uncontainable light. She doesn't just read energy, she translates it into liberation. She doesn't just hold space, she anchors frequency. She is a tarot reader, Reiki master, a spinal energetics practitioner, but those are just the gateways. The medicine is her presence. The transmission is her becoming. Jen's life is the kind of story most people only tell once it's over, once the chaos has cooled and the beauty is palatable. But she's not waiting for that. She's here now in the live wire of transformation, in the soft, terrifying place where your nervous system learns to stop bracing for impact and starts allowing in joy. She spent 22 years medicated into manageability, not because she needed fixing, but because the system couldn't hold the full voltage of her light. She was called too much, too sensitive, too loud, when in reality, she was just too sovereign to be domesticated. This is not a tale of recovery. It's a tale of reclamation, of a voice that was never lost, just chemically silenced, of a body that was never broken, just spiritually bypassed, of a woman who never needed permission to feel, but had to spend years remembering she didn't need to earn her existence. Now, nearly a year off medication, she's back in her body, back in her power, back in a rhythm of life that feels true. She's building her business with integrity, rewiring her nervous system with grace, traveling the world, holding ceremonies, and letting the sacred be seen in real time. But don't mistake her softness for safety. Jen carries a frequency that reprograms rooms. She's not here to perform healing. She's here to live it. Publicly, privately, imperfectly, and in full. This is not content. This is initiation. This is her reckoning, unfiltered, cellular, and sacred. Let's begin. Humans for Humanity is more than a podcast. It's a living experiment, a spiritual archive, a collective echo of what it means to walk the obstacle course of embodiment and come out more whole than we began. Each episode is guided by spirit and shaped by tarot. I don't write questions in advance. I pull cards and follow the energy. Because I believe the soul already knows what wants to be spoken. It just needs permission to speak. Behind this project is something bigger. I channeled a map called the Blueprint. It's my theory of consciousness. It says that we don't just show up on Earth. We drop in with purpose. And as we move through life, we traverse an invisible structure made of energetic gateways, each linked to a chakra, each initiating us into a deeper version of truth, power, and love. Every human story holds clues. When someone speaks about betrayal, grief, purpose, survival, or awakening, I listen for the frequency underneath of the facts. The blueprint helps me track where their soul is in the arc of return, what chakra they're wrestling with, what lesson they came here to embody. This podcast helps me prove the blueprint by living it in real time, by letting people tell the truth of what they've been through and noticing the patterns that emerge. Because when we zoom out, we see your story isn't separate from mine. And our pain isn't random, it's part of the passage. Humans for Humanity is the collective field where those pieces come together, where what once broke us becomes what makes us medicine. It's a sacred conversation between one voice and the many, one soul and the system that we're all moving through. And if we keep listening, we just might remember why we came. Explain the process, the mental back and forth of learning to convince yourself that you're safe, that you're in a safe place emotionally, energetically, however you want to translate that.
I mean, the first thing that's initially coming to mind is that, like, this is my first solo travel trip, which has been really cool and exciting. But I think what I've been learning recently is that when I create the safety within my body, I'm safe wherever I go. And so, like, wherever that, like, I'm safe in my vessel, in my home, in my body, then I can go anywhere. And so it's interesting. I've been going back and forth and playing around with the idea of moving to Bali. And so I've been kind of scoping it out this trip. And what I'm realizing is a past version of me a couple years ago would have never felt safe enough to leave or be this far away. And I think what I'm realizing is the work that I've been doing over the past several years has created safety within my body so that wherever I am, home is.
So we just found out we're neighbors and you're gonna move that far. That's cool. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
You had to make a decision about which walls were safety and which walls were holding you back from stepping into your purpose, stepping into this fulfillment. How did you decide where those walls need to be and, like, the strength of them?
I'm not gonna lie, I've struggled with boundaries my entire life. And I think when I think of boundaries, it's something that has been pressed upon me since I was young, especially I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 7 and put on medication, like you mentioned in that intro. And so my boundaries were a bit crossed when I was younger. And so I have had to learn through trial and error and push and pull what feels good, what doesn't. And within that question of, like, what feels safe, I feel like I had to figure out what I truly wanted.
Explain the walls. Like, there's a wall there, right? Because you need to protect yourself because of what you've experienced in the past. But, like, there's also this, I can't be walled in so much that I can't have experiences and fulfillment. I guess explain the wall itself. Like, where do those boundaries lie now?
I think one of the biggest things that I've been learning about boundaries is if it's a should, if it's I believe I should be doing this, it's an immediate, like, oh, that's a red flag. And then that's me not having control of where that boundary is being set, like almost like outsourcing my power. So giving that power away of what should I be doing versus what do I actually want to do. So kind of tuning back into that, like, original inner child, like, oh, this is what I should be doing. I should be taking this medication, or I should be doing this X, Y, or Z. And so when I outsource that power, that's been my, like, kind of red flag of, like, oh, this isn't me deciding where those walls are and where I actually want to be going, if that makes sense.
There's a balance that you had to find between, like, releasing how you were feeling, what you were thinking, all of this, but doing it in a way that didn't give people the ammunition to paint these labels on you and to tell you something's wrong with you. Talk about the experience of learning, okay, even though I feel some things, I need to word them in a way that is received and not causing more issues.
Yeah, I feel like in that regard, I definitely silenced what I wanted to say for a very, very long time. Like, I did not speak up. I did not say how I was feeling because I learned at a very young age that when I was told to take the medication, I would cry and get so upset about it that like no one was kind of listening to me. And so I like just learned to silence my voice. And kind of just going back to that, I developed a little bit of this like kind of Stockholm syndrome-esque with this medication of the thing that tortured me, then I believed was the thing that was saving me. And so it was like, oh, okay, if I silence this voice, if I make this thing quiet and I do what everyone else is asking me, it pleases everyone else around me. And I feel like everyone through this process of on our spiritual journey, you kind of face that moment of like, okay, I'm going to start telling my story and speaking up. And it can be uncomfortable for the people who have been a part of that story. You know what I mean? And I don't hold anything against the teachers, my parents, you know what I mean? There are societal expectations and all of those different factors. And it was part of my soul's path and destiny and acceptance of all of those things. However, speaking about my story and expressing myself and sharing about what I've been through has been such a cathartic process for me.
Tell us one line of what you would now tell that version of yourself that thought that silence meant safety.
Your truth is needed. Your truth is needed. The clarity's within.
Self-exploration in reverse. It's not outside of you, it's inside of you.
Surrender, it gets better.
The more you fight it, the more you're fighting yourself almost. Explain to us, what did you have to unlearn when coming out of silence into like vocal authority?
One of the biggest things I've had to unlearn, and it's still a deep, deep-rooted wound, but it's like this intellectual wound, specifically around that of you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what's best. In expressing my truth, is this going to make sense? Is it going to be expressed eloquently or perfectly or whatever? Is it going to be communicated in the way that it needs to be received, kind of thing? And releasing the need for it to be perfect, or almost even scrutinizing myself before even ever communicating it, which would then keep me from ever expressing it. So unlearning to not only stop like shaming myself before ever expressing anything, you know, and I feel like even as tarot readers, I feel like I have never been formally trained. I taught myself. I'm not sure if you've been, okay. Yeah. Like I don't have a degree in this, you know what I mean? I had to fully trust my own intuitive knowledge and wisdom. And so it's kind of supported that process of healing and really, really trusting myself. So yeah, that intellectual wound of I do know what I'm talking about. And I had to unlearn this belief that I was not smart or couldn't communicate myself properly.
I feel like that is a very common shadow that forms from that wound. It's like everyone else tells you don't know what you're talking about. So you start to convince yourself, okay, well, everything happening in my brain right now must be just not worth coming out. What's one thing that voice in your head would try and say to convince you to silence yourself when you first started trying to speak?
You're too much. They won't be happy with you. You won't be accepted.
Now, when you rewired that, when you said, no voice, that's enough, I'm not listening to you anymore, what's something that you said back to the voice?
This is your calling. Your pain has a purpose. You don't need to know it all.
This combo to me looks like start where you are, use what you have, and that's enough. Like you don't need to wait to have something outside of you. I feel like that's this justice card for you. It's this higher calling of you can build something. It's not time to wait anymore. When you start branching out and start putting yourself out there, start helping people, start holding space for people, it's inevitably going to bring up this one shadow that tries to grab you and pull you back in. Explain that shadow. When you took a step onto your path, this shadow tried to stand in front of you and was like, nope. And you were like, move. But what was that shadow?
I feel like I've moved through so many shadows. So it wasn't just necessarily one. I feel like, you know, it's like you open the closet door and you're like, oh, everything I haven't looked at, it's right there. Right. And it's to get through that door. And in order for me to get through that door, I actually need to look at all of those things. So I don't think it was necessarily just one thing. I think it was the intellectual wound. I think it was, you know, the communication wound. I feel like the biggest probable wound is like the intellectual communication wound that I had. So that was probably the biggest one that stood in the way. And you know what I mean? Like one of those ones that is formed at such a young age that you work through it and you're like, oh, I've got this now. And then it pops up and then you like work through it more and, you know, you kind of chisel it down. And so I find that maybe it does go away. I'm not sure, but I am not at that phase yet in my journey. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
I find that so not ironic. Maybe that's not the right word, but like I've always, whenever I listen to your messages, I'm like, she's so smart. Like she's literally so smart. It's crazy. So it's interesting that sometimes what we view, like that's the shadow you had to work the hardest to break out of. So like, I don't think you even realize that that's what people see a lot is that intelligence that like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. And it's interesting because when I was preparing for this podcast, I literally said that. I said, she's very smart. So it's interesting that that's kind of the invisible cry, suffering unseen, unheard, unheld. This wound forms when your pain goes unnoticed, whether because you hid it, were taught to minimize it, or were surrounded by those who couldn't hold it. You learn to cry in silence to cope alone. It can leave you feeling abandoned in your darkest moments and unsure if your needs are worth naming. Talk about how that would relate to that shadow standing at the door.
I mean, that card deeply, deeply resonates. I feel like it connects with like the death by 1,000 little paper cuts, right? It's not physical abuse that I suffered, you know what I mean? But it was this constant battering down of my confidence and my psyche, and like me constantly crying out as a child of being like, can you just see me? Can you see me? Can you see me for what I am, what I have to bring to this table? And it never felt seen. So I feel like as an adult, when I was presented with this and I woke up and I was like, Spirit said, hey, here you go. New start. Here's your path. I was like, what do you mean? Why do you want me to go out and speak and share? Like, what do I have to share? What do I know? And so it was I know it wasn't a re-traumatization because Spirit is so loving and kind, and they're putting you in positions that are good for you. But it did at that moment feel like oh my gosh, why are you trying to push me in this direction? But it was all for my highest and best good, you know? Yeah, just the wounds that we carry that you don't necessarily get to see.
I really relate to that because that was me with my YouTube channel. I was like, I don't want to do this. And if it wasn't for this blueprint project, I never would have done it. I jumped into true crime because I was like, I need something to prove, again, like you said, that I know what I'm talking about, that there's a basis here, right? So this invisible cry, imagine this is the table. On this side, it's going to be the version of you from back then. And on this side, the version of you right now. One sentence from that version to this and this to that, like over the topic of this invisible cry.
So I guess from the version of myself now, talking to the past version, I'm seeing the Knight of Wands as this passionate, fiery energy that like is just, there's so much energy, there's no, you can't contain it kind of thing. And so it's this they don't understand you is what I think that higher version would say. They don't understand your energy and your capacity, something along those lines. Now from the younger to the older, about the Two of Pentacles reverse, what's kind of coming through is like, you don't have to juggle it all. You get to choose a direction and move with it.
So that gives me the image of this very energized little child who's trapped in this almost like statuesque position. And that kind of feels to be related to this invisible cry, right? So there is this version of you, this little version of you that plays a big role in what you do right now, right? Okay, so Eight of Wands in reverse, delay, slow down, right? And then the Devil is like the old limiting beliefs. And then the Six of Pentacles, you get what you give. So like, how do you learn when it's time to slow down and be in receive mode versus when it's time to do? Like, talk about that balance.
I feel like it's a big, big part of our spiritual journey and path, right? Especially having been conditioned in hustle culture and like go, go, go. And especially having been on Adderall, which is like hyper masculine, like Superman power. So what I have found is that connecting to myself and actually listening to my body. So having been off of Adderall now, it's like the voice of my body has gotten so much louder. And so one of the key things that I have really tuned into is my masculine and feminine energy. And like, now I have like little, I would call it couples therapy, where I bring them forward and I see how they're showing up, because there were times where my masculine was just absolutely steamrolling my feminine, or my feminine was just like, we're not doing anything. And there was a point in time on my journey where I had filled my schedule, like packed with like 3-4 clients a day. And then I had a group session at the end of the week, and it was so much fun. We made money. It was great. And then the next week I got so sick, and my feminine part of the body was like, sit down. We're never doing that again. We'll listen here. And so I feel like that connection to self, learning to listen to both of those energies that are currently present in my body has been so helpful in me staying balanced. But it's really important not to allow, like, whether it's social media or my parents or like societal expectations of what my business needs to look like or how my work needs to go, like releasing myself of the expectation of what it needs to look like and how it goes.
I like that, the couples therapy thing for the masculine, feminine. Let's talk about that. How do you get yourself to sit with yourself in that way? Because Eight of Cups in reverse is like, nope, you're staying, you're going through this. Page of Pentacles, you got to look at it. What's that talk like for yourself? Because I know there's times where you're like, I don't want to do this, but I have to.
Yeah. So I do have a Scorpio stellium in my fourth house. So I love transformation and sitting and like going deep. It's something like I really enjoy doing. And so I'll hold them there for a while and be like, okay, guys, we have to figure this out. We're not moving forward until something is figured out. So I really do enjoy connecting with myself. I feel like one thing that I've found that in the 22 years I was disconnected from myself, I finally began to connect with myself. And after having a taste of being connected with myself, it's like when I then become disconnected again, it feels like my whole world gets shut down. So it's almost, and it's come from necessity versus like, oh, I have to do this. It's almost like, no, I need to do this because the rest of my reality will be in alignment if I create that alignment within myself. So I see the necessity behind it.
So I'm getting this visual of like this earthquake moment or time period. It was that moment. It was one of those necessity moments. Like, okay, I need to check myself because I'm realizing either I'm not moving or I'm moving in the wrong direction or everything's going too quick. But this moment particularly feels like a change of course. Talk about that change of course.
I've had a couple. For sure. I would say I have had several change of courses within relationships, and those have been big pivotal moments of my life where everything gets pushed back to myself and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going a different direction, as well as leaving my job. You know, like leaving, I was a special education teacher for 7 years and pivoting in that way of, okay, this doesn't support me, my brain, my body, my spirit. We need to change something because it's not working anymore. So I feel like those big earthquake moments are when it got loud enough, when it was loud enough that you can't take it anymore, when it was me being in a narcissistically abusive relationship, or it was me being at my job and hating going to work every day. Like it just got loud enough where you're like, what am I doing here? And why you just question everything. And I'm sure, you know, like it's the point of no return where like, I can't keep going like this.
What's one thing that was really loud? Like one, maybe not like an actual something that was happening, but more so like the loudness that was coming from it, your brain screaming at you from it.
Okay. So one of the big phrases that has come through on my journey is you don't have to rebuild what was never meant for you. And so it's like, let it all crash, let it all burn. And you were not meant to rebuild what was never meant for you, specifically within those relationships where I thought I wanted to be with this type of person because that's what I was brought up to want. And it was absolutely not what I wanted. And I had to let all of those belief systems crash around me. So yeah, I was let it all crash. Let them.
It's a very good book for anyone who has not read it. I don't know the author, but I forget the author. There are certain things that you had to stop doing, release, mindset shifts so that you could embody what you were trying to step into, especially as it comes to self-worth. Talk about how you realized that certain things that you were wanting or allowing were simply the self-worth wound making itself known.
Yeah. I mean, I think this ties a lot with addiction. So I have moved through lots of addictions, and whether it's smoking or drinking or like just being in many relationships, I feel like I was outsourcing a lot of my connection to myself, and I was doing things that would connect me back to myself in certain ways, right? Like I would drink and then it would bring me back to like the inner child joy, but then I would feel like absolutely horrible the next morning, or like I would smoke just to soothe myself or calm myself down. And so I was doing all of these things because I didn't have this. I didn't even think probably I had the power to be able to do those things on my own. Like that's how little, you know, the self-worth was. It was like, I don't even have the power to soothe myself. I don't even have the power to make myself feel better or sit with myself, you know? And so I think it comes back to the addictions and the things that I was, outsourcing, just outsourcing my connection to self rather than just sitting with myself.
I feel like that is almost common to the point where the commonality of it makes people not realize that it's happening because so many people are doing it that it seems like the norm. You're like, oh, this is a coping skill. And then it's like, people cope that way, but it's not, it's a skill. It's a numbness, right? When you see people now, like in your practice or everyday life that are going through that suppression of self, that silencing of voice, that disconnection, right? You knowing what you know now, going through it, being in the trenches of it, being on the numbed side and the taking back your power side of it, how would you describe what that shadow looks like on another person? Like when you're seeing it in a client or a friend or something like that?
What immediately comes through is like this self-created part of themselves that says that emotion or that thing that would come up is too scary. We're blocking you and protecting you from experiencing this because it's not safe to. So by experiencing some sort of addiction, whether it's outsourcing through relationships or alcohol or smoking or whatever it might be, it's like we are protecting you in a way and kind of protecting that emotion that you think is too big or too scary or too much to experience, because that emotion or that thing or that part of you was probably created at such a young age, that big emotion that you didn't know how to experience or move through, and no one taught you how to. And so then we are just like, there are so many big adults that are walking around as like big children kind of thing. And if you don't look at those emotions that have been like suppressed from childhood, we turn to all of these addictive substances because we still think that emotion is still too big, even though as an adult, you can have the skills to move through it, if that makes sense. So that's how I think of the addiction. It's we're trying to protect you as if you're a child, but you're not a child anymore.
That's really good perspective. I never thought of putting it like that. That's, when you're a child, the car looks huge. When you're an adult, you're like, oh, I'm the same height as the car. It's not as big type of thing.
Right.
That's a very good way to put it. The wound of the echo cage, only heard when you repeat what others want. This wound arises when your voice is only validated when it mirrors someone else's beliefs, needs, or comfort. You learn to echo, not express, to conform rather than create. It can leave you feeling muted, disconnected from your truth, and uncertain if you're ever truly being listened to. So when we see these wounds in others, it's an echo of what they were told to do or behave like or perform as, right? So tell us about the time in your life where Queen of Wands in reverse is lack of confidence, right? The Magician in reverse hiding your magic, and the High Priestess is like keeping your magic a secret. So you had to go from I'm not allowed to show myself to like I'm breaking out of the cage. Talk about that shift of perspective.
Yeah, I think a big part of it was reclaiming the intellectual wound, the label that I was given as ADHD and a learning disability of like the way that my brain works is weird and not good, and it won't be able to do the math problems and the reading and go to college and yada, yada, yada. And what I have learned since my awakening is my brain is so, I won't curse, but intuitive, so intuitive. And the exact thing that people diagnosed me for was my magic and is my magic. And so it's like that frustrating piece of like the thing that makes me money now, the thing that like that lights me up and drives me in my business and my life now is the thing that I had to be disconnected from because society told my parents that it needed to be shut down, and medicated and disconnected. So the shifting point, I think fully has been me getting off of the medication, like that full body switch. But it started awakening after, different big tower moments that took place in my life. But I think the big shift here was realizing that the ADHD is not like a learning disability. It's a deeply intuitive knowing
that people just weren't taught how to trust or believe in. So when you start believing in it and trusting in it, they're like, nope, that's wrong. Yeah. That's it. Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Think of right now, when I say the tower moment, you don't have to tell me what it is. I want you to describe the feeling that these cards brings up in you based off of that tower.
that I didn't have a choice. My voice was taken. I didn't have a choice in the matter. My power was taken from me.
Imagine that there is this shield. What's your shield that, like, before people would throw things and they'd hit you? Now you have this shield that you're like, oh, it's going to bounce off of me.
It's just like, which sounds like it's just this deep intuitive knowing. It's like the knowing that has gotten me here. And granted, it was probably, and it was harder at the beginning, but like the amount of trust it's taken in myself to get me this far and how good it's been. And it's just, the universe has shown me time and time again, when I trust myself and follow my intuition and listen to my spirit team, like they provide tenfold, and it is bigger and better than I could have ever imagined. So regardless of how silly I think I look, how out there it might seem, I'm absolutely living a dream I could have never imagined even like a year and a half ago. So it's like, even if people judge me, make fun of me, whatever it might be, it's like, look at where I started and where I am now. So I think it's the past, it's the intuitive knowing and how far, where it has led me thus far.
Right. And I think that's important, because that feels like a very simple and basic thing, but I probably would have given a similar answer. It's like, sometimes you don't really have anything outside of you. You just have that knowing that, like, I'm being led somewhere. I just got to trust it. Ghost of potential. Haunted by who you could have been. This wound forms when you carry the weight of unlived possibilities, versions of yourself that never had the chance to thrive. Whether blocked by fear, circumstance, or sacrifice, their absence lingers. It can leave you feeling regretful, unfinished, and haunted by the ache of what might have been. You weren't willing to settle for that. You started to see that ghost of potential, and you were like, I'm not letting it turn into that.
Yeah.
So talk about then, how did where you thought you were going to head in life versus where you are now, right? Explain how what you thought you wanted then could have never fulfilled the version of you now.
The version of me now, unmedicated and deeply connected to myself, could have never been fulfilled in working for someone else or working in a structure that is broken. I can't imagine this version of myself still being in that. It felt like when I stopped taking the medication, the energy that got locked away as a child, the part that they wanted to like suppress, which is my like kind of Aries moon, which is very lively and fiery. And I run off of adrenaline, that like travel, and I just finished a surf camp. Like that's kind of what lights me up, and doing kind of crazy fun things. So that version of me is coming out again, the part that was silent. So I conformed myself. That past version of me was in the job that they wanted me to be in, whether it's my parents, the society, my teachers, that kind of thing, being that person. And so the version of me, that 7-year-old version of me, is now coming out, obviously in a different way, but the essence, the soul essence of adrenaline and fun and fire, is coming out. So that part of me needs to be stoked and fueled. So it just makes sense that I could not be in a space that needs to confine me, needs to be free.
You can't put the light back in the jar.
Yeah.
It's already out. One thing that those experiences that you couldn't be in now, but they prepared you for now. So one thing that past job, that past situation, one thing it taught you to prepare you for now.
How to lead and teach and break things down for people. How to lead and break things down for people. I was a special ed teacher, so I learned to teach things to kids without being condescending, and give them the patience to catch up and learn and explain it in a different way, which is basically what I do with tarot anyway. I don't explain things in a cookie cutter textbook way. I talk about metaphors that spirit brings me and all this kind of stuff. So it is conducive in that way, that I had the structure to learn how to explain things to people in a different way.
Right. You learned how people receive learning, or like how to shift it when they're not receiving it the first way.
Yes.
That's important.
I think praise, being able to see, being a teacher, especially for students with disabilities, and I don't even want to call it disabilities, that's definitely a program. It's just being a teacher in general, praising the kids for wherever that they're at in doing whatever they're doing and just praising them and like being so proud of them, even if it's the smallest win or the biggest win, and doing that for my clients now and doing that for myself now, just like celebrating all of the wins and really seeing the person for who they are and what they have to bring.
Right.
I think with the hierophant in being hierarchical, I definitely needed to learn discipline and structure, and that you need to move up the ranks, and that like I did go and get my master's for teaching. So I think like the discipline in showing myself that I was able to achieve a high level, even after being diagnosed and put on medication and yada, 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 all those things, kind of proving to myself that it's possible and that anyone can move up in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be the exact same way as everyone. But yeah, I would say the discipline to move up the ranks within education.
That leads me to this thought. Okay, so before, it's like you were on the ground and you were kind of tied down by this bungee cord. And this is like literally you breaking through this glass ceiling. 1 line or 2 lines per card about breaking through that glass ceiling in whatever way you want to take it.
Your emotions are your key.
Yeah.
The pain will subside for sure. All parts of you are welcome here.
That's good. That needs to be on a hoodie. Yeah, that's good. That being said, all parts of you are welcome. All of you is welcome here. There was a part of you that was very hard to welcome. 3 of Pentacles in reverse. It's like, you were like, I don't know how to work with this part of myself because it feels unfamiliar. Ace of Swords in reverse. I can't really see this part of myself. So how can I work with it? 9 of Cups. I want to. Talk about that.
I would say my emotions and my anger. One of the biggest key, and it kind of ties back to that first set of cards where your emotions are your key. And what I found is when you work with those emotions, especially rage and anger, like it sets you free in a whole different way. But I was never able to access that. I was never necessarily modeled that as a child, right? Like I was never able to see someone actively be angry in a positive or cathartic way, like just not taught to us, you know what I mean? And so being able to access those emotions, work with them, and take time to allow them or allow your body to feel safe enough to access those emotions was a huge, huge key piece in my current fulfillment right now. Like I love to cry multiple times a week, if not every day, just because it makes you feel so good and connects you back to self. And so that's been a really key piece in my journey.
I want to talk about that because a lot of people are raised with the belief that, crying is weakness, or, if you're crying, it means something's wrong. And crying is not always something's wrong. Crying is there's emotions and this is how I'm letting them out. Right. So talk about moving through that fear anyway. Knight of Cups in reverse is with 10 of Wands. Like this is the difficult part of me to love, but Wheel of Fortune, I'm going to do it. Talk about the resistance and the fear of like, I'm going to start to feel this. What happens if it gets to be too much? Like, how did you get yourself to cross that threshold?
So I think a lot of components, one of the biggest parts of my journey has been prior to this. It was 2 months where I was by myself and I just spent the entire 2 months healing. And I think it's such an important part of our journey is hermit mode, going inward and fully being alone, giving yourself permission to not see anyone and not feel guilty about not seeing anyone, because you need that sacred space to feel into it and not judge yourself for anything that comes up. Right? Like there was a point in time where those 2 months I was crying every day. I was screaming into pillows. I was punching the pillow, releasing anything that needed to come out without judgment, because I needed that space and no one else around me to be able to access that part of me. And it was difficult because like you're conditioned to judge yourself. Like, oh my God, if I uncork this, what is it never going to stop? Is it just going to consume me? Right. And so in creating safety in the body, like I was supported throughout that time, meeting weekly with a coach, you know what I mean? And so somebody to check in with all the time. So like, it is so important to have someone there to support you through that process. However, a lot of that had to be done alone. And like, I had to see where I was judging myself. And so even the judgment portion of that was sacred and important so that I could see, ooh, why am I judging myself for these emotions or this expression? And learning to love all parts of that human expression.
Talk about one of the more difficult moments that you had when you were first processing this stuff. There was a time when you kind of like had to take yourself out of yourself in a way, like look at yourself as if you're taking care of someone else with one particular wound or shadow or unpacking of something. Talk about sometimes you need to care for yourself or take the advice that you would give someone else, even if it's difficult to do from yourself to yourself.
When you're saying that, the thing that's immediately popping into my mind is like, you know, how we've got the parts of ourselves. We have our masculine, our feminine, and our inner child. And I call it my little inner family. Yeah. And so I make sure that I have little family meetings with them and I check in with them often. And so one thing that I realized before coming to Bali was that my inner child was really, really nervous about coming. And she was like really excited and excited but nervous at the same time. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully moving to Bali. But there was a part of me that was resistant to even the idea. And I had to sit with my inner child and take care of her and help her understand that like, oh, if we move away, that means like, I think there was a fear there, or there was, I shouldn't say I think, there was a fear there of if we move away, will my parents not be there when I get back? Right. And having to hold her through that and cry through that and release that. And so I think holding the different parts of ourselves, and that was just one example, you know what I mean? I think there are different parts of ourselves that we need to then hold and care for from a higher perspective, you know what I mean? Like reparent ourselves through that healing process.
When people listen to what you said and they think, okay, how can I do that? Like if I want to sit down at my kitchen table and I want to kind of have this family meeting with myself, talk about the emperor, power, authority. King of Swords here to me is like this internal conversation in order to Two of Swords in reverse make a decision. So like, how talk about how people could decide what type of family meeting would suit them. Like, how do they get to that place where they're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to get benefit from it?
Yeah. So the masculine needs to see the importance of feeling those emotions, because King of Swords reverse is like, I don't see the importance of the emotions that the feminine wants to have. Like, that's silly. We don't have time for that. So can the masculine hold that container and create a set time aside in the day, right? Even if it's 5 minutes to sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to visualize 3 chairs in front of me, one for my masculine, my feminine, and my inner child. And we're just going to check in to see how they show up, see how they walk in the room, see what they're wearing. Are they talking to each other? Are they like arms crossed? How are they showing up? And if you're noticing that is difficult to even do, it's probably an imbalance with the masculine, because he can't hold the container, because he doesn't see meaning your internal masculine doesn't see the importance of holding that container for the feminine to feel heard, seen, and feel through any emotions that are present.
So let's take those chairs. Let's say people have a hard time doing it, like just internally imagining visually that way. Let's say someone grabs a deck and they set up 3 piles just like we have here, and they're going to have the family meeting this way. I'm going to flip over 3 cards: masculine, inner child, feminine. Put yourself in the shoes of someone who's watching this. They grab the deck, they put them down, they flip over these cards for themselves. What would you say of like how to interpret that in regards to this family meeting? For masculine, we have 9 of Pentacles in reverse, inner child, 4 of Swords in reverse, feminine, 2 of Cups.
Okay, so interesting. So what's immediately coming to mind is I'm going to go to the inner child first. I'm being drawn to it first. The inner child deeply desiring just to be, that a true essence of just being, not needing to do, not needing to perform, not needing to, whether it's rest, it's play, it's whatever they want. What if they want to take a nap, right? The 4 of Swords wanting to rest, go inward and just like connect and feel safe enough, right? Like that energy of feeling safe enough to even to nap. So I would, taking time there. I'm being drawn to the 2 of Cups. So the feminine is deeply desiring some kind of connection, right? Like deeply desiring to connect, deeply desiring to be seen, facing one another and coming together, and really just to listen and come into union. The 9 of Pentacles reverse, it's giving me like lacking the self-worth, like feeling like not feeling good enough to come to the family meeting, like almost like I need to keep working because I don't have enough to show for it yet. Like not giving themselves enough time to relax and being like, it's still not done. The work's not done. My garden's not big enough, kind of thing. So seeing how the feminine just wants to connect, the masculine's like, I don't have time for you because I need to keep building and working. And the inner child's like, can we all just sit down and take a nap and just chill out? So noticing even how that might be coming out and playing out, it's everyone wants the same thing, right? The masculine wants to provide and make sure that the inner child and the feminine can relax. However, they're not giving themselves the space to connect and make the feminine feel safe or the inner child feel safe enough to rest.
And the way you just put that together, it's like these cards all look very different, right? We have pentacles, we have swords, we have cups. They are not the same suit, right? None of them are the same suit. That should be, okay, well, there's all this different things going on, but the way you looked at it and put it together, they're all working for the same thing. They're just working at it in different ways. So when you sit and have this family meeting, you're like, hey guys, we all want the same thing. Let's just try and find a way to work together for it. I feel like that's a very good tool to have. So in that regard, let's say people do the family meeting, they come out of it, right? What's one thing, like motivational punches, that you would say to encourage people to then be able to unpack or take action on what that family meeting revealed? 9 of Swords in reverse.
I know it sounds cliche, but everything's happening for you, not to you. This is coming up for a reason. This is setting you free, maybe even. Can't put out a fire when you're on fire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the family meeting is the putting out of the fire. So you can look at it and be like, okay, this is what we're working with now.
Yeah.
That's good. You need to make this family meeting thing in some kind of series or something.
Connect with yourself first is what's kind of connect and yeah, connect with yourself first.
It's interesting too, because we had the 2 of Cups. So like the connection that the Queen of Pentacles desires is first with self, or the divine feminine desires is with self, so that you can connect with others.
Yeah.
Same thing for these. Wait, do I have enough left? Oh, I have 3 left.
Boundaries are an act of love.
Boundaries are where I can love me and you at the same time. It's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah. What's coming through is we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing.
And when you sit and look at it in that way, you kind of realize that the fight externally is so that you look within and realize that you're fighting yourself.
Yeah.
So let's end this on this then, right? There's a major battle that, you know, like in a video game where you get to the final level and you fight the big bad monster, right? Talk about that, because you've already won that battle. You're already past that battle. But looking back at it with the knowledge you have now that you didn't have then, describe how that battle, although difficult, wasn't as impossible as the version of you before you went into the battle tried to convince yourself it was.
It's interesting because the version of me who now can see the battle that I went through, the monster that I had been fighting was this authentic version of myself that everyone had projected their own beliefs on me about this version of me that was not acceptable. And so I spent majority of my life shutting down this version of me, this most authentic version of me, thinking that I needed to trap this monster inside of me and hush it and quiet it. And what I realized is that when you unleash the beast, which is my most authentic self, my most raw, real version of myself, it is the most accepted, it is the most magnetic, it is the most fun and free and loving version of myself. And so I think what I've learned through that is the perception that matters most is myself. And so I think I reclaimed my perception of myself from everyone else, because everyone was giving me their own opinions about me from such a young age, and I'm sure everyone else as well, but that I reclaimed my own perception of myself and who I am and what I am capable of.
I love that. Yeah. It's the full circle of not knowing that other people were telling you who you are and then realizing it and being like, oh, you don't have that role. You don't have the pen in my life. I do.
Yeah.
Death.
My favorite card.
Your rebirth. How did I not realize that card didn't come out yet? The wound of the hungry root, seeking depth in shallow ground. You were swimming in the deep end, and everyone else tried to convince you it wasn't safe. You have to come back to the shallow end. This wound forms when your longing for connection, meaning, or truth is met with emptiness or surface level bonds. You reach deeper, but there's nothing solid to hold. It can leave you feeling starved for intimacy, spiritually restless, and unsure if what you seek even exists. You were the depth that they didn't know how to swim in. And now you teach others how to swim instead of convincing them that the shallow end is safer.
Yeah.
Final words.
This was incredible and amazing. Thank you so much for giving me the floor and the space and for sharing your magic with me. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for being here. This was, I honestly feel like so many people are going to be grabbing their deck, having family meetings with themselves and be like, when you figured it out.
Yes.
I love that so much. Okay, so we're going to get into the outro. Again, Jen did not hear the outro. None of the guests hear the outro. They are told that it is a bookend to the intro. Okay, so thank you again so much, Jen, for being here. She didn't come to be liked. She came to be lightning. And today, she struck. Not the kind that flickers for attention, but the kind that splits the sky open and dares everything below it to wake up. Jen didn't offer talking points. She offered transmission. The kind that makes your bones remember something you didn't know you lost. Because what she carries isn't just her certifications. It's encoded in the cracks she survived. In the silence she turned into signal. In the ache she chose not to ignore. She doesn't perform healing. She becomes the portal, inviting us into the body of the unsaid, the trembling yes to her own needs buried beneath the polite no she learned to perform. Here, energy tells the truth where words were taught to hide. This isn't vulnerability for views. It's voltage, raw, uncaged, and real. She was once medicated into silence. Now she's unmuted and untamed. She didn't lower her voice. She rewired the room to be able to hold her. She didn't rebuild in private. She rebuilt in ceremony. She doesn't just read energy. She rearranges it, recharges it. Jen is the one that your shadow trusts when everyone else turns away. She meets pain on the floor and plants altars in the dark. This isn't inspiration. It's divine interruption. A reminder that palatable women don't change the world. The ones who stopped shrinking do. She didn't just survive the system. She broke its spell. She didn't ask for a seat at their table. She built a blaze no table could contain. This is the reckoning of the uncontainable light. A woman who stopped shrinking and started storming. Who stopped softening the edges and started sharpening the signal. She doesn't shine for applause. She ignites on purpose. She is living proof that your voice was never too loud. The world was just too quiet. So let this moment spit you out. Let it call the wildfire out of you. Let it be the reason you stop waiting and start rising. And never again dim what was born to disturb the dark. This isn't a finish line, it's a fault line. The beginning of a new frequency where your fullness is no longer negotiable. Thank you again so much, Jen, for sharing your heart and your story with us. It is truly appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you everyone for watching as well. As you probably are aware by now, there's the Humans for Humanity community page. It has wisdom from the episodes. It has playlists by my guest. It has a 10 and a 20 tarot spread that you can do based off the guests. And it also has mirror journal work in there. So please check that out. It's a free resource. Give me about a week and Jen's page will be up as well. You'll also be able to find how to contact and book with Jen in the description. And she'll have the info on the community page as well. The application for Humans for Humanity is now available. It is on my STAN.STORE. It is a little bit longer in nature, question-wise. You can type voice record or video yourself doing it, please take your time with it. The first season I have booked anyway, so don't rush through that. Please take your time. I will see you next week for another episode. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone. This was another episode of Humans for Humanity, and thank you for watching.